The year was 2347, and Commander Wu Jin stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters in Seoul. The room was dark except for the blue glow of screens that covered every wall. Outside, the city lights sparkled like fallen stars, and people walked the streets without worry. They did not know that in a few minutes, everything would change. Wu Jin was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. He had served Earth for 30 years, and he had seen many things, but he had never seen anything like what appeared on the main screen that night. The signal came from deep space. It was strong and clear, cutting through all frequencies at once. Every screen on Earth, every phone, every device that could receive a broadcast suddenly showed the same image. Billions of people stopped what they were doing and watched. The image showed a massive chamber made of black stone and gold metal. Strange symbols covered the walls, and floating lights drifted through the air like lazy fireflies. In the center of the chamber sat 12 figures on tall thrones arranged in a half circle. They were not human. Some had scales like fish. Others had skin like rough bark. One creature had no face at all, just a smooth surface with 3 glowing dots where eyes and mouth should be. They were the Council, the rulers of the galaxy, though humanity had never heard of them until this moment. The creature in the center stood. It was tall and thin with pale blue skin and 4 arms. When it spoke, its voice was translated into every human language at the same time. "Creatures of the small world called Earth," it said. "We are the Council. We have watched your kind for 200 cycles. You have spread beyond your world. You have touched the stars. This cannot be allowed." Wu Jin felt cold spread through his chest. Around him, his officers stood frozen, their faces lit by the terrible broadcast. The image changed. Now it showed a different place, a human colony. Wu Jin recognized it immediately. Nova Prime, the first human settlement beyond the solar system. 3,000 people lived there, scientists and families who had traveled for years to build a new home among the stars. The colonists were on their knees in a row. Their hands were bound behind their backs. Armed aliens stood behind them, creatures with hard shells and weapons that glowed with ugly red light. "Your kind has been judged," the council speaker continued. "You are young, you are violent, you are unworthy of the stars. Watch now and understand your place." What happened next would burn itself into the memory of every human who watched. One by one, the colonists were executed. The weapons made no sound, but the people fell like puppets with cut strings. Men, women, children, the aliens showed no mercy. Wu Jin gripped the edge of his console so hard his knuckles turned white. He wanted to look away, but he could not. He owed it to those people to witness their final moments. Then he saw her. Captain Han-Mi stepped forward from the line. She was not on her knees like the others. Her uniform was torn and dirty, and blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. But she stood straight, and her eyes burned with defiance. Wu Jin knew her well. She had trained under his command 10 years ago. She was one of the best officers Earth had ever produced. And she was the sister of Admiral Han Ho, the most respected military leader on Earth. Mi looked directly at the camera. She knew billions were watching. When she spoke, her voice was steady and strong. "Earth, do not surrender. Do not bow. Remember us and make them pay." The weapon fired, she fell. The council speaker appeared on screen again. Its 4 arms spread wide in a gesture that might have been meant to look peaceful but felt like mockery. "Your colony is no more. Your expansion is ended. You will remain on your small world and provide resources as we demand. You will not build ships. You will not reach for the stars. If you disobey, your entire species will be erased. You have 1 cycle to send your surrender. This broadcast is ended." The screens went dark. For a moment there was only silence in the command center. Then someone made a sound, a low, broken sob. Another officer slammed his fist against a console. Someone else was praying quietly in the corner. Wu Jin turned to his communication officer. "Get me Admiral Han, now." The call connected in seconds. The face that appeared on screen was familiar: strong jaw, sharp eyes, close-cropped hair. Admiral Han Ho looked like a man carved from stone, but Wu Jin could see the cracks. The Admiral had just watched his sister die. "Admiral," Wu Jin said, "I am sorry, there are no words." Ho's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Did you see what she said?" "I saw, the whole world saw." "Good." The Admiral's eyes hardened. Something changed in his face, something that made Wu Jin's breath catch. It was not grief anymore. It was something older and darker. "Commander, I am calling an emergency meeting of all military leaders. Every nation, every force, tonight." "What are you planning, Admiral?" Ho leaned closer to the camera. "The Council believes they have broken us. They believe that broadcast will make us afraid. They do not understand what they have done." "What have they done?" "They have united us." The Admiral's voice grew stronger with each word. "For the first time in human history, every person on Earth shares the same enemy. They wanted to show us their power. Instead, they showed us our purpose." Wu Jin nodded slowly. He understood. The aliens had studied humanity for 200 years, but they had learned nothing. They did not know about the wars humanity had fought against itself. They did not know about the times humans had been pushed to the edge of destruction and climbed back. They did not know that humanity's greatest strength was not its technology or its numbers. It was its fury. That night the world did not sleep. People gathered in streets, in homes, in places of worship. They held candles for the dead of Nova Prime. They wept for Captain Han Mi and the 3,000 souls lost. But beneath the grief, something else was growing. It spread from person to person like fire through dry grass. It was in the clenched fists of soldiers. It was in the quiet determination of scientists. It was in the eyes of children who did not fully understand what they had seen but knew that something terrible had happened. The Council wanted fear. Instead, they had planted seeds of rage. In his office, Admiral Han Ho stood before a window that looked out over the Pacific Ocean. The water was dark and endless, like the space between stars. He held a photograph in his hand, himself and me as children, smiling in summer sunlight. "I will not forget," he whispered to the glass. "I will not forgive, and I will not stop until they understand what it means to hurt us." Somewhere in the galaxy, the Council celebrated. They believed their message had been received. They believed the humans would cower and obey. They had made a terrible mistake, and soon, very soon, they would learn the price of it. 3 days after the broadcast, the leaders of every nation on Earth gathered in Geneva. The old conference hall had seen many historic meetings, but nothing like this. Presidents sat next to prime ministers. Generals spoke with scientists. Old enemies shook hands and swore new oaths. Admiral Han Ho stood at the center of the great hall. The weight of what he was about to say pressed down on his shoulders, but he did not bend. Behind him, a screen showed the face of Captain Han Mi, frozen in the moment before her death. Her words were written beneath the image: "Remember us and make them pay." "We have one choice," Ho said, his voice filling the silent hall. "We can surrender. We can give the Council what they want. We can live as slaves, harvesting our own planet for creatures who see us as insects." He paused and looked across the sea of faces. "Or we can fight." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Russian president leaned forward. "Admiral, with respect, we have just achieved interstellar travel. These aliens have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. How can we possibly fight them?" Ho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because they do not know what we are. They have watched us from far away. They have counted our ships and measured our weapons, but they have not studied our history." He pressed a button and the screen changed. Images appeared: ancient battles, medieval wars, trenches filled with soldiers, mushroom clouds rising over destroyed cities. "Humanity has spent its entire existence at war," Ho continued. We have fought over land, over resources, over ideas. We have built weapons that could destroy our world 100 times over. We have survived plagues, famines, and disasters that should have ended us. And every time we were knocked down, we got back up stronger. The hall was completely silent now. The council thinks we are children. Let us teach them what human children are capable of. The vote was unanimous. The Terran coalition was born that day. Every nation pledged its soldiers, its scientists, its factories, and its will. For the first time in history, Earth spoke with one voice. 2 weeks later, Admiral Ho called a meeting in a secure facility beneath the mountains of Korea. Only 4 people were invited, chosen for their brilliance and their courage. Arrived first. She was 32 years old with short black hair and eyes that seemed to see through walls. She had designed Earth's most advanced weapons systems, and she had a mind that worked faster than any computer. Park Jin-ho came next. He was older, with wild gray hair and glasses that were always slightly crooked. His work in quantum physics had made faster-than-light travel possible. Some called him the person on Earth. Bora was younger than the others, only 28, but her record spoke for itself. She had led military simulations for years, and she had never lost. Her tactical mind could predict enemy movements 5 steps ahead. Commander Woo Jin was the last to enter. The admiral had requested him personally. "I need someone who saw what I saw," Ho had explained. "Someone who will never forget why we fight." When everyone was seated, the admiral activated the room's holographic display. A 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, floating in the air above the table. "This is what we know," Ho began. "The Council controls over 2,000 star systems. They have 12 member species, each with their own military forces. Their combined fleet numbers in the hundreds of thousands of ships." Jin-ho whistled softly. "And we have what, 50 ships capable of interstellar travel?" 47, Woo Jin corrected quietly. "So we are outnumbered roughly 4,000 to 1, Bora said. She did not sound worried. She sounded like she was solving a puzzle. Leaned forward, studying the map. "What about technology? Do we have any samples of their equipment?" Ho nodded. "The colony at Nova Prime managed to transmit some data before the end. Our people there captured a damaged alien scout ship. We have its power core, its weapon systems, and part of its navigation computer." "I want to see everything," said immediately. "You will, but first I need each of you to understand something." The admiral's voice grew heavy. "The Council believes we will surrender. They gave us 1 cycle, roughly 3 Earth months, to send our response. They expect fear. They expect obedience." He looked at each person in turn. "Instead, we will give them silence. We will not respond. We will let them believe we are paralyzed with terror. And while they wait, we will prepare. By the time they realize their mistake, it will be too late." The work began that very night. Spent weeks studying the alien weapon systems. She worked without sleep, fueled by coffee and something darker, the memory of watching colonists die. On the 23rd day, she burst into the admiral's office with wild eyes. "I found it," she said. "I found their weakness." She explained that the Council's ships used energy shields that operated on a specific frequency pattern. These shields were incredibly strong against the weapons the Council was used to fighting. But they had a gap, a tiny window in their frequency cycle that lasted only a fraction of a second. "Our weapons are different," said, her voice shaking with excitement. "They are cruder, simpler, more violent. If we time our attacks to hit during that gap, we can punch through shields they believe are unbreakable." Meanwhile, Jin-ho was working on something even more ambitious. He had studied the alien navigation computer and discovered that the Council had once experimented with star-killing weapons, but abandoned the research because they considered it too dangerous. "They were afraid of what they created," Jin-ho explained to the team. "So they destroyed all their records, but our friends at Nova Prime captured a fragment of that data. He pushed his glasses up his nose and grinned. I think I can finish what they started. Bora worked on tactics and strategy. She studied every piece of information they had about the Council's military, looking for patterns and weaknesses. She built thousands of simulated battles, testing different approaches. They are overconfident, she reported after months of analysis. Their military has not faced a real enemy in centuries. They fight the same way every time because it has always worked. They will not expect creativity or desperation. Across Earth, the war machine awakened. Factories that once made cars began making weapons. Shipyards that built passenger vessels started constructing warships in secret. Every able body volunteered for service. Farmers, teachers, artists, people from every walk of life stepped forward. The Council's spies reported that Earth had gone quiet. The humans were not building ships, they said. The humans were not training soldiers. The humans were broken, defeated, waiting to surrender. The spies were wrong. Beneath the oceans, in hidden underground bases on the dark side of the moon, humanity was building an army. The work was done in secret, in shifts that ran day and night. Workers painted the names of the Nova Prime dead on every ship they made. Admiral Han Ho stood before a small altar in his quarters each night. On it rested a photograph of his sister and a candle that never went out. "We are coming," he whispered to the flame. "We are building something they have never seen, and when we are ready, the galaxy will learn what happens when you awaken Earth's fury." The 3 months passed. The Council's deadline came and went. Earth sent no response. In the great chamber on the Councils, the 12 rulers discussed this strange silence. Some thought the humans were planning something, but most believed the small creatures on the small world were simply too broken to even form words. They decided to wait. There was no rush. What could such primitive beings possibly do? They would find out soon enough. 18 months had passed since the broadcast that changed everything. On the surface, Earth looked peaceful. Cities hummed with normal life. Children went to school. People worked and laughed and lived as they always had. But this was a mask. Beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a cavern carved from solid rock 3 miles below the waves, Commander Lee stood on a platform overlooking the greatest secret in human history. 200 warships filled the massive underground dock. They hung in rows, suspended by magnetic fields, their hulls gleaming with fresh paint. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had built before, powerful, fast, and armed with weapons that existed only in theory 2 years ago. Was a woman of 45 with a calm face and steady hands. She had commanded submarines for 20 years, learning to survive in dark, crushing depths where one mistake meant death. Admiral Han Ho had chosen her to lead the fleet for one simple reason: she never panicked. "Status report," she said to her second-in-command, a young officer named Shin Young. Young checked his tablet. "All 200 ships are complete, Commander. Weapons systems are loaded and tested. Crews are aboard and ready. We can launch on your order." Nodded slowly. She walked to the edge of the platform and looked down at the nearest ship, the Fury of Sol. Workers moved across its surface like ants, making final adjustments. On its side, painted in red, were the names of every person who died at Nova Prime. "These ships were supposed to take us centuries to build," she said quietly. "The Council's own estimates said humans could not create a fleet like this for 500 years. Young smiled. "The Council does not know humans, Commander." That was true. When Admiral Ho announced the project, people from every country had stepped forward. Engineers worked double shifts, then triple shifts. Scientists solved problems in weeks that should have taken years. Ordinary citizens donated everything they could: money, time, even food and sleep. Weapons designs had been simple but devastating. Instead of trying to match the Council's elegant technology, she had created something brutal and efficient. Human weapons were ugly, loud, and incredibly destructive. They were designed to hit hard and fast, to exploit the weakness she had found in alien shields. Jinho's engines were even more impressive. He had improved on the Council's faster-than-light technology by removing all the safety features. The aliens built their ships to last for centuries, with layers of protection and redundant systems. Human ships were built to fight one battle and win it. "We might not come back," Jinho had admitted when presenting his designs. "These engines will burn out after a few jumps. These weapons will overheat after sustained fire. But for that short time, we will be faster and stronger than anything in the galaxy." It was a desperate gamble, but humanity was desperate. On the dark side of the moon, another facility housed the fighter squadrons. Myra stood in the hangar, watching her pilots run through final drills. She was 30 years old with sharp features and a scar across her jaw from a training accident that had killed 3 of her friends. Myra had been flying since she was 16, first in her father's crop duster, then in military jets, then in the experimental spacecraft that no one else could control. She had volunteered for this mission the same day as the broadcast, before anyone even knew there would be a mission. "Again," she shouted to her squadron. "Formation 3, attack pattern Delta, go." The pilots scrambled to their fighters and launched into the black void. Myra watched on her display as they executed the maneuver, a complex dance of speed and precision that would have been impossible a year ago. Her pilots were young, most of them under 25. They had trained using simulations designed by Bora, brutal programs that killed virtual pilots again and again until only the best survived. The simulations were based on human combat history, air battles, naval engagements, guerrilla warfare. "The Council fights in straight lines," Bora had explained. "They expect their enemies to line up and exchange fire until one side is destroyed. They have never seen anything like human tactics. They have never faced pilots willing to die if it means taking the enemy with them." Myra thought about that as she watched her squadron complete the drill. Every one of these young people knew they might not survive. Every one of them had volunteered anyway. A message appeared on her display. It was from Admiral Han Ho, marked urgent. "All commanders report to main briefing room. We launch in 48 hours." Myra felt her heart beat faster. Finally, after 18 months of waiting, training, and building, the time had come. She gathered her pilots and told them to rest while they could. Then she boarded a shuttle to Earth. The briefing room was deep beneath the mountains of Korea, was already there along with Jinho and Bora. Woojin stood in the corner, his face unreadable. At the center of the room, Admiral Ho waited. "Thank you all for coming," Ho began when everyone was seated. "I will keep this brief. Our target is Orbital Bastion 7, the Council's forward military station in our sector of the galaxy." A holographic image appeared, a massive structure bristling with weapons, surrounded by hundreds of ships. Intelligence reports say the station commander believes humans are not a threat. They have reduced their patrol frequency. Their shields are often lowered during off-duty cycles. They are not expecting an attack because they cannot imagine one. Bora took over. "We will approach in 3 waves. Commander Lee's fleet will be the hammer, hitting them head-on and drawing their fire. Commander's fighters will be the knife, slipping through gaps in their formation to strike their power cores. The 3rd wave will be a reserve force to exploit any openings." Added, "Our weapons have been calibrated to the shield frequency gap I discovered. Every shot that hits during that window will do maximum damage. The Council has never faced this kind of assault. They will not know how to respond." Ho looked around the room. "I will not lie to you. Many of us will die in this battle. The Council has more ships, more soldiers, more experience, but we have something they do not." He paused and his voice grew hard. "We have a reason to fight. They are protecting an empire built on the bones of weaker species. We are fighting for our families, our homes, our right to exist. That difference matters. That difference will make us stronger. Raised her hand. Admiral, the Council's broadcast was sent across the galaxy. If we strike their military station, everyone will see it. Every species they have conquered, every race they have enslaved. What message do we want to send? Ho smiled, the first real smile anyone had seen from him since his sister died. I have prepared a response to the Council's original broadcast. After we take the station, we will send it on every frequency. The galaxy will see what happens when you underestimate humanity. He activated a recording. His own face appeared on the screen, his eyes cold and hard. You showed us no mercy, the recorded voice said. You will receive none. The message ended. Silence filled the room. That is what we will broadcast, Ho said. 7 words, simple and clear. The galaxy will understand exactly what we mean. Myra stood. Sir, what about the ships at the station, their crews, if we destroy them all? We will give them one chance to surrender, the Admiral interrupted. One chance to lower their weapons and withdraw. If they refuse, we will show them the same mercy they showed our people at Nova Prime. No one argued. They had all watched the execution. They had all seen the colonists fall. They had all burned with a fury that 18 months had only sharpened. 2 days later, the fleet launched in secret. 200 warships and 2,000 fighters rose from Earth's hidden bases and jumped toward the stars. The crews were quiet, focused, ready. Commander Lee stood on the bridge of the Fury of Sol and watched Earth shrink to a tiny blue dot, then disappear entirely. For Nova Prime, she whispered. For Captain Han Me, for everyone who told us we were too small to fight back. Beside her, Young checked the navigation display. Course confirmed, Commander. We will arrive at Orbital Bastion 7 in 16 hours. Nodded. Good. Tell the crew to rest. When we arrive, there will be no time for sleep. The silent fleet crossed the void between stars. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. But it would learn soon enough. Orbital Bastion 7 floated in the darkness of space like a monument to power. It was the size of a small moon, covered with towers of metal and bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. 300 council ships surrounded it in lazy patrol patterns, their crews bored from years of peaceful duty. Station Commander stood on the observation deck, watching the stars through a wall of transparent crystal. He was a tall creature with pale blue skin and 4 arms, a member of the ruling species of the Council. He had commanded this station for 50 years without a single battle. Another quiet night, he muttered to his aide, a nervous creature with scales and too many eyes. These humans are taking their time with their surrender. Perhaps they are too stupid to even form the words. Perhaps, Commander, the aide agreed. Our scouts report no activity from their world. They build nothing, they prepare nothing, they simply wait. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. Of course they do. What else can they do? We showed them their place. We showed them our strength. They know resistance is pointless. At that moment, alarms began to scream. The aide's many eyes went wide. Commander, our sensors detect. They detect. Speak clearly, fool. Ships, Commander. Many ships. Coming out of hyperspace directly behind our defensive line. Spun toward the window. Points of light were appearing in the void, dozens, then hundreds. Ships of unfamiliar design, smaller than council vessels but somehow more aggressive in their shape, poured into normal space. That is impossible, breathed. The humans cannot have ships, they cannot. The first missiles hit. Commander Lee watched the explosions bloom across the enemy formation. The council ships were turning, trying to raise shields and form defensive positions, but they were too slow. They had not been expecting an attack. They had not even considered the possibility. All ships, this is the commander, said into her communication system. Remember your training. Remember Nova Prime. Today we show the galaxy what humanity can do. The battle began in earnest. Human warships pushed forward in a wedge formation, their weapons firing in perfect rhythm. Had calculated the exact timing needed to hit the Council's shields during their vulnerability window. Every third shot punched through defenses that had never been breached before. Council ships exploded, then more exploded, watched in horror as his patrol fleet was torn apart in minutes. "Launch all fighters," he screamed. "All ships engage, destroy them." The remaining Council vessels moved to attack. They outnumbered the human fleet, and their ships were larger and more heavily armed. Allowed himself a moment of hope. Once the shock wore off, his forces would crush these insects. Then the human fighters arrived. Myra led her squadron through the chaos of the battle. Her fighter was small and fast, built for speed rather than durability. Around her, 2,000 pilots followed in perfect formation. "All wings break and engage," she ordered. "Target priority carrier power cores. Secondary weapon platforms show no fear." The fighters scattered like a swarm of angry hornets. They were smaller than anything the Council used, harder to hit, more agile. Myra dove toward a massive Council carrier, weaving through defensive fire that tried to track her but always arrived a moment too late. Her targeting computer locked onto the carrier's power core. She fired. The core exploded. The carrier began to break apart, flames erupting from its wounds. Myra was already turning, seeking her next target. "Splash one carrier," she shouted. "Keep moving, stay fast, don't give them time to think." On the bridge of the Fury of Soul watched the battle unfold. The Council forces were in chaos. Their organized formations had collapsed. Ships collided with each other as they tried to maneuver. Officers screamed contradictory orders. "Commander, the station is launching reinforcements," Young reported. 200 additional ships." Nodded, this was expected. "Signal the reserve wave, tell them to intercept." 50 human warships that had been waiting behind the main force surged forward. They hit the reinforcements before they could join the battle, trapping them between two lines of fire. The hours passed. The battle raged. Human ships were dying too, watched icons blink out on her display, each one representing hundreds of lives. But for every human ship lost, the Council lost 10. Myra was everywhere at once, it seemed. She shot down fighters, strafed weapon platforms, and guided her pilots through impossible maneuvers. But even she could not avoid every shot. A missile struck her port wing. Her fighter spun wildly. Warning lights screamed in her cockpit. "Commander is hit," someone shouted over the communication channel. Myra fought the controls. Her vision was blurred. Something wet was running down her face, and she realized it was blood. The missile had done more damage than she thought. "I am still here," she growled through clenched teeth. "Stay focused on the mission." She managed to level her fighter, but half her systems were dead. She could fly, barely, but she could not fight anymore. Below her, the battle was turning. The Council fleet was in full retreat. Ships were fleeing toward the station, seeking shelter behind its massive shields. "All forces pursue," ordered. "Do not let them regroup." The human fleet pushed forward. The Council's orbital defense platforms fired desperate volleys, but human ships dodged and weaved through the barrage. They had trained for this. They had prepared for years. On the station's command deck watched his empire crumble. His fleet was destroyed. His reinforcements were scattered. And still the human ships came, unstoppable and relentless. "Commander," his aide whimpered, "what do we do?" Did not answer. He was thinking about the broadcast he had helped create 18 months ago. He remembered laughing as the human colonists were executed. He remembered the satisfaction of teaching the primitive species their place. He was not laughing now. "Prepare an escape shuttle," he finally said. "We must warn the Council. They must know what these creatures are capable of." He fled. Moments after his shuttle launched, human missiles struck the station's power core. Orbital Bastion 7 died in fire. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, a new star that flared and faded, marking the end of 10,000 years of Council dominance in this sector. Stood on her bridge and watched the station fall. Around her, exhausted crew members embraced and wept. They had done the impossible. They had won. "Damage report," she ordered, her voice heavy. Young consulted his display. "We lost 47 ships, Commander. Nearly 8,000 dead. Commander is alive but critically wounded. She is being transported to the medical ship now." 47 ships. 8,000 people who had left Earth knowing they might never return, closed her eyes and said a silent prayer for them. And the Council's losses. All 300 patrol ships destroyed. The station is gone. We estimate enemy casualties at approximately 200,000. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had won its first battle against the masters of the galaxy. The cost was high, but the message was clear. "Open a channel," said. "All frequencies, galaxy-wide broadcast." The communication officer's hands shook as she worked the controls. "Channel open, Commander." Activated the recording Admiral Ho had prepared. His face appeared on every screen across 1,000 worlds. His voice reached the ears of trillions of beings who had lived under Council rule for generations. "You showed us no mercy," he said. "You will receive none." The message repeated again and again as images of the battle played alongside it. The galaxy watched human ships tear through Council forces. They watched the station explode. They watched impossible become possible. On 100 enslaved worlds, beings who had given up hope felt something stir in their hearts. If these small creatures from a small world could fight back, perhaps others could too. In the medical bay of the transport ship, Myra lay unconscious. Doctors worked to save her life, fighting against wounds that would have killed a normal person. But Myra was not normal. She was human. She would survive, and she would fly again. Far away, the 12 rulers of the Council received word of the disaster. They watched the recording of the battle in stunned silence. Their greatest military station, their mightiest ships, destroyed by creatures they had dismissed as insects. The Council speaker, the same being who had delivered the original ultimatum, spoke in a voice that trembled with rage and fear. "Send every fleet we have, find their world, burn it to ash." But even as the order was given, they knew something had changed. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy had seen the Council bleed. And the humans were only getting started. News of the battle at Orbital Bastion 7 spread across the galaxy like fire through a forest. Species that had been slaves for centuries heard the story whispered in their camps and cities. The humans had won. The Council had bled. Admiral Han Ho did not give the galaxy time to forget. Within weeks of the first victory, the Terran fleet was moving again. They struck a Council supply depot in the system. They hit a communication relay that controlled military messages across 3 sectors. They attacked a shipyard that was building new warships. Every target was carefully chosen, every attack precisely planned. Bora worked without sleep, coordinating operations across dozens of light years. Her tactical mind had proven itself at Orbital Bastion 7, and now she was pushing it to its limits. She studied Council movements, predicted their responses, and found weaknesses they did not know they had. "The Council thinks like an old empire," she explained to the command team during a strategy meeting. "They expect enemies to fight for territory, to hold ground, to build fortresses. They do not understand how humans wage war." Commander Lee nodded. "We are not trying to hold ground, we are trying to break their will." "Exactly. Every attack makes them spread their forces thinner. Every victory makes their subjects question their power. We are not conquering systems. We are destroying the idea that the Council cannot be defeated." The strategy worked better than anyone had hoped. On a world called, A species of insect-like beings lived in underground hives. They had been slaves of the Council for 800 years, forced to mine precious metals in tunnels that collapsed and killed them by the thousands. When news of the human victory reached them, they began to organize. A delegation arrived at the human fleet's forward base 3 months after the first battle. They were small creatures, barely reaching human waists, with hard shells and multifaceted eyes. Their leader, a female named Queen, spoke through a translation device. "We have watched your people fight," she said to Admiral Ho. "We have seen you do what we believed impossible, the wish to join your war." Ho studied the small aliens. "What can you offer us, Your Highness?" "Ships," replied. "We have hidden 100 vessels from the Council for generations, waiting for a chance to use them. We also have intelligence. Our workers serve on Council stations throughout the sector. We know their secrets." It was the beginning of an alliance that would change everything. Over the next 6 months, more species joined the fight. The tall beings with silver skin who communicated through thought shared intelligence about Council military movements. The massive warriors with stone-like flesh pledged their strength to ground operations. Even some member species of the Council itself began to whisper about rebellion. Myra returned to duty as soon as the doctors would allow it. Her injuries had been severe. She would never fly with quite the same grace as before, but her spirit was unbroken. She led her pilots in a dozen more battles, each one adding to the legend of the human hornets. "They call us monsters now," Myra told her squadron before an attack on a Council prison world. "They tell stories about us to frighten their children. Good. Let them be afraid. Fear will make them hesitate, and hesitation will make them die." The battle for the prison world was brutal. Council forces fought desperately to protect the facility, knowing that millions of slaves were held inside. But the human fighters were relentless. Myra led the assault herself, dodging through a maze of defensive fire to destroy the shield generator. When the shields fell, ground troops moved in. Thousands of prisoners were freed that day, beings from 100 different species who had given up hope of ever seeing there again. Many of them immediately asked to join the human cause. Back on Earth, Park Jin-ho had completed his greatest and most terrible creation. He stood before Admiral Ho in a secure bunker, his face pale and his hands trembling. "It works," he said simply. "The Prometheus device, it can collapse a star." Ho felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. A weapon that could kill stars. A power that no species in the galaxy had ever possessed. "You are certain?" Jin-ho nodded. The Council abandoned this research because they were afraid of it. They believed no one should have such power. Perhaps they were right. He paused, his voice cracking. "Admiral, I have spent my life building things, creating things. This is the first time I have ever built something that exists only to destroy." Ho placed a hand on the scientist's shoulder. "I understand, and I pray we never have to use it, but if the Council pushes us to the edge, if they threaten Earth itself, we must have an answer." The weapon was kept secret. Only 5 people knew it existed. They hoped it would never be needed. Meanwhile, the war continued. Human forces liberated 17 star systems in 3 months. Each victory brought more allies, more resources, more hope. The tide was turning. Council Admiral, a veteran commander with skin like granite and eyes that burned with ancient fire, was given command of all military forces. He was the Council's greatest warrior, undefeated in 200 battles across 5 centuries. "These humans are clever," he admitted to the Council during an emergency session. "They do not fight as we expected. They strike and vanish. They attack where we are weak and avoid where we are strong. They have turned our subjects against us." The Council speaker leaned forward. "Can you defeat them?" Was silent for a long moment. "I can try, but understand this, these creatures are not what we thought. They are not primitives who stumbled into space by accident. They are predators. Every species has a role in the universe. Some are builders, some are thinkers, some are artists. The humans. He paused, and something like fear flickered in his ancient eyes. The humans were made for war. He launched a massive counterattack, gathering every available fleet for a strike at the human forward base. 3,000 council ships moved as one, determined to crush the rebellion in a single blow. But Bora had predicted this. She had studied history, analyzed his victories, and found his weakness. He was brilliant, but he was predictable. He always attacked with overwhelming force, trusting in superior numbers to carry the day. "He will come at us head-on," she explained to the command team. "He cannot imagine we would stand and fight against such odds, so we will not stand. We will let him chase ghosts while our real forces hit his supply lines." The trap worked perfectly. His massive fleet found only empty space where the human base had been. Meanwhile, human and allied ships struck his supply convoys, his communication relays, his fuel depots. Within weeks, his fleet was stranded without resources, unable to fight or retreat. Watched his perfect strategy crumble. For the first time in 500 years, he had been outmaneuvered. "Send word to the council," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Recommend immediate peace negotiations." The message reached the council as human forces prepared their final assault. The 12 rulers gathered in their great chamber, the same room where they had ordered the execution of Nova Prime's colonists. They looked at each other with fear in their eyes. "We must negotiate," the council speaker said. "We cannot defeat them in battle. Every day brings more species to their side. Every day we grow weaker." "Then we destroy another ruler suggested. "We bypass their fleet and burn Earth to ash. Without their planet, they will scatter." "And how do we reach Earth?" a third demanded. "Their ships control every approach. Their allies watch every route. We would lose half our remaining forces just getting there." The debate raged for hours. Some wanted war to the last ship. Others wanted surrender. Some proposed compromises that satisfied no one. While they argued, the human fleet gathered at the edge of their space. 200 warships, reinforced by 300 Allied vessels, prepared for the final push. Admiral Ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at a holographic display that showed the path to the councils. So many battles, so many deaths, and now, at last, they were close to the end. Joined him, she looked tired, they all looked tired, but there was fire in her eyes. "The weapons are ready," she reported. "Every ship is armed with the latest modifications. If they fight, we can match them. And if they surrender—" Was quiet for a moment. "Do you want them to surrender?" Ho thought about his sister. He thought about the colonists at Nova Prime. He thought about the rage that had burned in his heart for 2 years, driving him forward, keeping him alive. "I want justice," he finally said. "I want them to answer for what they did. I want the galaxy to know that such crimes have consequences." He turned to face his crew. "Signal all ships. We move in 6 hours. Destination Prime. It is time to end this." The fleet jumped into hyperspace. The final battle was about to begin. And across the galaxy, trillions of beings held their breath and waited to see how the story would end.